Today's executive session meeting of the Methuen School Committee to order. The date is Monday, June 22nd. Time is 5:34 p.m. We're meeting in the Media Center at Methuen High. I just want to note right at the outset that we are working with an amended agenda. Tonight there was a Scrivener's error on the original version that indicated that the meeting was taking place on Thursday, June 22nd. That's since been corrected. There's an updated agenda online. We confirmed with legal counsel that we're good to proceed with tonight's meeting, considering that it is only a Scrivener's error. So here we are for tonight's meeting. I will ask Secretary Donovan to call the roll.
Vice Chair DiZoglio. Absent. Donovan Grassi, present. Member Baez.
Present.
Member Keegan.
Present.
McCarthy Soroyce.
Present.
Member Willett.
Here.
And Mayor Beauregard.
Here, we have a quorum, so we can proceed. We'll take now a motion and a second to accept the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion's from Member Keegan, second is from Member Soroyce. Any discussion? No discussion. We'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll rise now for the flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, we have public participation. We haven't received anything in writing, and we don't have an audience, so I will close public participation. Next on the agenda, we have an executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, the interim superintendent. We have a separate meeting beginning at 6:30, so what I'll say is 6, okay?
6.
Sorry, my bad. So we have a separate meeting at 6, so we can adjourn the executive session, and then we'll begin anew at 6. And with that, I will ask the secretary to take a roll call vote on entering executive session.
Vice Chair DiZoglio. Member Donovan Grassi, yes. Member Baez.
Yes.
Member Keegan.
Yes.
Member McCarthy Soroyce.
Yes.
Member Willett.
Yes.
And Mayor Beauregard.
Yes. Just for the record, Vice Chair DiZoglio has joined us, so at this point, we'll enter executive session, and we have our meeting at 6 o'clock. Good evening. The school committee workshop business end-of-year session of June 22nd, 2026 will now come to order. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available for viewing on the Methuen Public Schools website. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chair DeZoglio.
Present.
Donovan Grassi, present. Member Baez.
Present.
Member Keegan.
Present.
Member McCarthy Royce.
Present.
Member Willett.
Here.
And Mayor Beauregard.
Here. We need a motion and a second to accept tonight's agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motions from Member Royce. The second is from Member Keegan. Discussion, Vice Chair.
We're going to motion to remove item number 3 from the agenda for now.
Is there-
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Vice Chair DeZoglio and the second from Member Willett to remove number 3. Discussion about that. I'll just state as a housekeeping item, we'll probably have a special meeting. So
Absolutely.
we can sort that out before the
Special
end of the
meeting,
year.
whatever needs to
Yep,
be done, I want to still work on this.
Absolutely,
That's an absolute reflection I'm going to give right now.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Let's have a motion and a second now to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Motions from Member Royce, seconds from the Vice Chair. Any other discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Rise to the flag salute. I'll ask that we remain standing, and I'll invite the Vice Chair to share a moment of silence.
Thank you. I'd like to have a moment of silence for a class of 2007 student and the brother of our principal here at the high school. Adam Corrett passed away late last night. Our thoughts and prayers go to the family. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. First on the agenda, we have public participation. We haven't received anything in writing. No one's here tonight, so I'll close public participation at this point. If you are unable to attend a meeting in person, in the future, you can email Susan Shanti at snscionti@methuen.k12.ma.us before 3 p.m. on the day of the school committee meeting. Next on the agenda, we have the strategy plan, year 2 overview and highlights. I'll invite Dr. Golubsky to begin her overview.
Thank you. I've already presented 4 quarterly reports this year, but there were just a few remaining items that I wanted to address this evening with regard to our strategy plan. And I first wanted to publicly thank all the administrators and teachers and staff members in the district for sticking with us through a difficult year, through some transitions in the budget season, and really giving their all for our students. Today was our last day of school, and while we had a lot of smiling faces who were excited to head into summer, we also had some tears, sad to separate from the teachers and staff members that our students have grown so fond of. So I appreciate that as well. Around January or February, I had said that our intent by the end of the year was to at least initiate all the key actions in our strategy plan for all 3 objectives, and we have done just that. So beyond just initiating those actions, we've really committed to those and are in full swing with some, and a couple others we look forward to moving on next year in more depth. So first, I'd like to talk about Objective 1, and that's our objective regarding literacy development and language acquisition. All of the items here in terms of creating school-based walkthrough schedules, supporting staff through lesson planning, being part of our learning acceleration network, creating and implementing a district-wide assessment calendar, creating a multi-year cycle of curriculum review and revision. All of those actions have been initiated and are underway, and we are beginning to reap the benefits of those while continuing to refine our practices. Amplify is the publisher of CKLA, which is the brand-new ELA curriculum that we launched this year, which was a tremendous amount of work. And it's exciting to be at the end of year one. And in year two, that's when we get into more detail about how we're using the curriculum skillfully, what we're focusing on each lesson. But to date, I wanted to point out a few aspects of the program and where we stand with it. So Amplify, in our end of the year meeting with them, offered Methuen the opportunity to take part in the Science of Reading Coach pilot, which is a brand new feature and part of their program. So only a few districts were selected. In the Science of Reading Coach, it uses AI, a Q&A feature, and an addendum to each lesson where the teacher is able to move through the lesson and then ask questions, or the program will highlight what aspects of the lesson are the science, pertain directly to science of reading and where they should be leaning in. So we have asked teachers K4 if they would like to participate, and Amplify will select some teachers for participation. So we're eager for the extra assistance there. That will come at no additional charge. Also, at the end of the year meeting with Amplify, they highlighted just through this publisher alone, there were 29 professional development sessions offered to teachers. They gathered 279 participant responses from the PD sessions that move independently of us and go directly to the publisher. And 93% of teachers who submitted those responses said that they feel prepared for the next steps next year in terms of implementing the curriculum. Also at that meeting, they shared with us some reports that we typically do not have access to on our platform. And now that we know that we can get access to those, we're either going to be asking Amplify regularly to produce them, or perhaps they'll open up that portal to us. But that pertains to the M-Class growth data. So what I typically present to you is the achievement data, where you might recall it's the four colored bars that talk about whether the student is above, at, below, or well below where we would hope they would be at that time of the school year. And the M-Class growth data measures students making average or above average amounts of growth compared to other students across the nation who had a similar beginning of the year score. So dependent upon where they started the year, how much do we expect them to grow, and did our students accomplish that? And so on the next grid, Ms. Bozak, I'm sorry I'm moving quickly here, but I know you can find me. We're on the blue bars. On the next graph, you'll see here that we have grades K through 4. And the line across the top shows those national norms, and the national norm is set at 60%, meaning 60% of students make average or above average growth. And very proud to say that in our first year of implementation of the program, where we're really still learning about its capabilities, we exceeded that in grades 1 through 4 in terms of growth, and we're just below in K. What's interesting to us as a leadership team, when we're looking at this data and asking for additional charts beyond this, is that there are some inconsistencies across classrooms, grades, schools, and so we're gonna work on narrowing in on where we can improve and be even stronger in supporting our students. But overall, this is great to see, as sometimes when you're beginning a new curriculum, there's a bit of a slide in year 1, and so we did not experience that. Also, as I alluded to schools, I know that there's sometimes some curiosity as to how different schools fared, and to that extent, all were above or nearly at what we would hope for in terms of growth. So CGS at 70, Timony at 60, Marsh at 69, and Tenney at 59. And within those schools, there's so many layers of which to slice the data, some outliers that might be impacting data one way or the other, but more information for us to delve into over the summer. and those just became available to us last week, so that's of interest to us. Okay. Mhm.
This is really interesting to me. So is this comparable to what we would see, I even hate to compare it to the MCAS, but the student growth percentile, which we don't really look at a lot as a committee, but it can be really helpful to a teacher. So I guess I have two questions. Is this something that we could kind of compare apples and orange wise? And do the teachers, will they have access to the individual growth scores of each student?
Yes, so it's similar to the SGP from the MCAS. And similarly, that threshold is 60, where we'd like to see students as well. So it seems like that's what they're trying to mirror here with the Amplify. And it's of use to us because it's in real time that we're able to gather this information. So yes, what I'm really interested in is showing teachers their class scores as well, almost like we do with the MCAS. And we do it on two ends. So students who they just had, who are advancing to the next grade, which may inform how they go about their instruction moving forward, but also the students coming to them. Sometimes we're hesitant to show individual student data because we don't want teachers to create a profile of the student in their mind before they meet them, but certainly the aggregate as a class might be useful to help indicate areas where they may want to focus going forward. But of course, we have the beginning of the year benchmark for that as well. But we do plan to do that, sharing with teachers and also building administration. I think that's really important too, because as I alluded to, there are some pockets what we're interested in, either spreading what's going really well there, or maybe a misconception that we can help correct. Mm-hmm. And then for Dreambox, this, if you recall, is the assessment that we're using for our upper school students. I hadn't shared with you the Q4 or the end of year marks at last presentation, so I wanted to add those here. And you'll see the beginning of the year versus the end of the year by grade, and then also by school. This is the first time in my recollection where we've had all schools and grades end fairly similarly and on the higher end. In the past, we've had some outlier grades or schools, but you can see here at the end of the year benchmark, every grade district-wide is over 60% of students shown to be reading at or above grade level. And again, one data point, but useful information. And then the same thing for the schools, where we have CGS at 60, Marsh at 69, Tenney at 64, and Timony at 60. Important to note that all of our students, those in the Excel program included, our newcomer program, do take this screening data because it's important to us instructionally to figure out how best to support students. And so all in the 60s in terms of the end of the year growth, room to grow certainly, but we are encouraged by that. And we'll be moving to the M class next year for the upper school as well, which will be really nice to show the consistent trends. And we'll be able to pull students and track them all the way through. Okay, and then also wanted to highlight on the next slide, which looks, oh, I'm sorry.
We had the anxious generation talking about social media, and we always talk about the science of reading and literacy. Is there like a latest definitive book on reading that could be presented to the school committee that we could read during the summer, like a summer reading assignment? Because I would like to dive into the literacy, because we talk about different test scores and different metrics and different, you know, and I applaud what you're doing, obviously, and the team. But I also want to make sure that I'm not a full expert, but I also want to learn. So if you have a definitive book, like the Anxious Generation was for, it's wonderful for social media. It was eye-opening. If we had a definitive book, because I think the science has fluctuated through the decades.
It has.
So if you and your team can just pinpoint one book and give us like an assignment for homework during the summer reading, I would definitely dive into that. Because
Okay.
I definitely want to learn about this. Obviously, the forte is you and your team with bolstering the literacy and reading scores. And I think with the state, what's happening is that, I wanted to make sure too, I think we're in alignment with everything that the state is proposing. I think we're ahead of the curve. So maybe even have that type of report. But I think I see massive changes in the test scores, but I also want to know personally, what's the latest science? Because I think it is a scientific method to it. So that would be something I would appreciate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Member Keegan has a question.
I just have a question about, you mentioned that the Excel students were taking this. Are our special needs and specifically the sub-separates taking these benchmarks and are included in these numbers? I just find the marsh very high if they were being included.
I do not believe our sub-separate programs are. Our other special education students are, though.
Okay, thank you.
This assessment in particular is deemed ineffective unless the student's reading at a 3rd or 4th grade reading level to start. And so sometimes when students are below that level, it'll signal that to us, and then we can move them to a different assessment. But just to keep that in mind.
Great, thank you.
And then I like the idea of the books, and also Amplify provides a lot of one-pager resources for parents and community members on the science of reading, so I'll print some of those out as well.
So I have one more question through the chair, if possible. In terms of the continuity of testing, I think you were talking about what I had talked about a few years ago. If that's going to be explored in greater detail, the pros and cons of it. Because I think if we alternate between testing different models, the methodology, the longevity, the longitudinal aspect of it, I think having continuity of testing. Sometimes it gets dropped by the wayside through no fault of our own. But I think you were talking about that possibility. I'd like to go into further detail during the summer, when everything's like a little bit quiet. It's never quiet with the school district, but if possible. Thank you.
Sure. I actually put that on the agenda for one of the early fall meetings to talk about that. Okay, and also I wanted to highlight the students reading above grade level. These students, it could range from a year or two above to 5 or 6 years above. But I found it really impressive and wanted to share that if you look at by grade level across the district, it ranges from 40 to 49% of students are reading above. And if you were able to go through individually and look, it's not just above, it's way beyond. And so I find that reflective of what I see when I visit classrooms, that there is a portion of students who are excelling and achieving and need the enrichment and enhancement. And then there are students who are right where we would expect them to be, and then also students for whom we need to fill some gaps and help support. And so that's really the challenge that our teachers are facing, is the widespread needs within the one classroom. Okay, so moving to objective 2, and this is reducing the opportunity and achievement gaps between student groups. So we had set out at the onset of this 3-year plan to revise and review and strengthen our MTSS process, which we spent a large part of this year doing, to consider equitable grading practices, which is going to be a large part of our work next year, review the efficacy of win block and reading success to deliver instruction, which we have been doing, thinking about the referral process for our interventions, which ties into MTSS, co-teaching and communities of practice, looking at our DCAP, our district curriculum plan, which accommodation plan, which I'll talk about later, and then working on expanding some of our programs and monitoring the efficacy of those to make sure that the programs we're investing in are really doing what we hope that they will do. So for this objective, what I wanted to highlight tonight had come up from some committee members earlier, and that was about our early college program as it stands now. We are currently working with Northern Essex to enhance and add another partnership, but to date, I wanted to highlight just this year, since we've had the early college designation with UMass Lowell, what that looks like and what the impact has been for our students. So if you're unfamiliar, our early college program is a 2-year program, and we ask that students are committed to it throughout those 2 years. And the students have an opportunity to take 8 college courses and earn up to 12 college credits over 2 years. This is from our Assistant Director of Early College who provided this information, Ms. Daly. And the pathways that were offered this year included the Introduction to Teaching, Engineering, Law and Criminal Justice, and then there were some gen ed courses that went with each of those pathways. And if you notice, these pathways, although they're specific to a specific profession or interest a student may have, could still be considered gen ed requirements, so that if at the end of the program the student wishes to change their mind or go into a different major, these would carry over and would be credit bearing for them moving forward. So we had 83 students, and when we say here MHS students, but they're truly considered MHS/UMass Lowell students enrolled in our early college program. And just in this year, we had 264 college credits earned by the class of 2026. And we had 9 MHS seniors who graduated with 12 or more college credits, seeing as we did have a partnership earlier, but it was formalized just this school year. Also, I spoke of this earlier, the summer opportunity, where students will go free of charge through our grant funding to live on campus for 2 weeks, to take a 3-credit college class called Social Problems, fully all expenses covered. And if they complete this program and the 2-year pathway, they will have earned 15 credits, which is a whole semester of college. So heading into next year, same pathways will be offered. Introduction to sociology instead of calling it Introduction to Teaching, engineering, law and criminal justice, and still some gen ed course of college writing. So you'll notice a major difference between this year and next is whereas we had 2 gen eds this year and 2 pathway specific courses, students that begin the early college program next year will experience 3 pathway courses and 1 gen ed course. Currently, we have 57 rising juniors who are interested in the program and will be new to it next year. And we have 48 returning seniors. So because we have space, we are budgeted to support 150 students across grades 11 and 12. We will be able to open up opportunities for students who hadn't opted into the pathway but still wish to access a course as well. Okay, so Ms. Daly wanted me to highlight that there were some students who over time, and having spent time in the program, came to see themselves as true college students. One anecdote in particular of a student who had really no intention of going to college, was unsure they'd be able to persist as a result of going through the pathway, building relationships with the University of UMass Lowell staff, felt comfortable moving forward on campus, and then completing the first year of UMass Lowell as a freshman, ended up on the dean's list, and attributed that success to the early college program. Also wanted to highlight about advanced placement, our advanced placement students this year. Those scores are available between July 6th and 10th. There's different reports that come out different days. I know the teachers anxiously await those scores to be published. This year, we administered 762 AP exams to 387 MHS students in 23 subject areas. So in the fall, I'll be able to supply you with information about passing rates, subject areas that were most popular, and what that means for students in terms of seeking college credit. That's one of the areas that's sometimes tricky for parents and students to navigate, is whether early college or advanced placement is the best option for them. So over the summer, our counseling staff is going to help create a one-pager or some information that helps decipher the difference in what those options could bring for students.
Mr. Chairman, through the chair to the acting superintendent, and we don't have any problems with anybody that's low income of taking examinations. There's a process to help with the fees, so if someone takes multiple AP examinations, they're not gonna be deterred simply because of the economic status of the household. Is that correct?
That's correct. In 2008, we began a partnership with MIMSI, which is an organization that is interested in opening access for AP courses to all students. And as part of that partnership, our teachers get professional development at a much reduced price that the district is able to incur. Our students were able to take mock exams. It helped us afford the cost of those exams. And although we've moved away from that formalized partnership because we achieved what it had hoped to achieve in terms of opening access to students, they still allow us those discounted opportunities. Also, the College Board offers some discounted opportunities for students as well. So determined by the assistance status of our families, we sometimes can offer tests as low as, I believe it's $25 per test. And we do have some funding to support students that have difficulty coming up with that. Because that's a good point to raise. We do have some students that take 5 or 6 AP courses a year. It could add up really quickly.
And then secondly, in terms of like the sky's the limit with the expansion into the early college courses at different places, are we constrained as a school district? Like if we are able to explore other opportunities with like NECO, obviously UMass Lowell, there's a lot of alumni here that teach, that went to UMass Lowell. So is there anything that we would as a system look into or work with the state in terms of being constrained of, because it's amazing the course selections. Like looking long-term, I think as many kids as we can get involved in education, then you're limiting remediation. It's a form of testing anyways, and the colleges, they're gonna be aligned with the high schools. So they're not, I hate the diploma mill mentality, we're not being engaged in that. These kids are passing courses, AP examinations. So down the line, like, do you envision anything being constrained in our system? Because I mean, NECO would be great, I think UMass Lowell is excellent, but anything else that you can envision?
No, our early college status makes it easier for us to add another partner onto that. So it'll be easier for us to add Northern Essex since we already have an early college destination with UMass Lowell. There's also different areas which we can target to make sure all students have the opportunity. So our most recent conversations with Northern Essex have talked about looking at our CTE programming and building in courses as part of that pathway, because our students need the hours, the additional coursework, and can have the dual benefit of getting some micro-credentialing and earning college credit. So there's some areas of interest there. Also, whereas our UMass Lowell partners delivers more of a hybrid experience, the Northern Essex partnership would deliver more of an in-person experience with our students going to those campuses. And so there's different offerings, I think something for everyone. So we're interested in moving forward with that. And then objective 3 is about enhancing our partnerships with students and families. Last meeting you heard about the vision of a graduate. We've talked about the use of talking points over time, publicizing school events, looking at extracurricular, school-based activities, working on our chronic absenteeism, and expanding the Mental Health Parent Student Advisory Council, developing an advocacy and awareness building action plan, and the BRIGHT program at the CGS, and administering surveys to get educator feedback on school culture and climate. And finally, looking closer at what our tier 2 and 3 counseling services are having in terms of their impact and making adjustments if necessary. So I first wanted to bring to your awareness, I don't know if you're able to see it on the slide, it's a chart. The idea here is that it's a one-pager that could easily be distributed to students and families. And I had asked Mr. Crocker to come up with this because we do have a lot of offerings in terms of mental health supports and awareness, and programs that are available not only to students but families and staff as well, that sometimes it can be hard to navigate or distinguish one from the other. And so this is a one-pager that just articulates what exactly these opportunities or programs are. And so this is something that we can add on to as well in terms of the difference between like Care Solace and some of our other offerings. But I thought that was important to do. So we're beginning to get that word out. And then I've mentioned before, a second step is sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt the
Sorry,
flow.
I was just
No, but
rolling.
I know you are, and I appreciate it, but I wanted to go back to the first bullet on objective 3, the chronic absenteeism, which is obviously impacting student achievement, behavior, everything, right? That responsibility lies so heavily on administrators in the building. Does the state have anything in play to support schools to improve chronic absenteeism? Is that, because it's not just us, and it's so much work to keep track, and it's so much work to find out the root cause. Is there anything the state is doing in terms of money, programming, support?
There was an awareness campaign originally to make it known that it in fact is a struggle from many schools. In terms of funding, I've seen funding for programs that we run after school that increase voice and belonging, which you could argue impacts attendance. They've also recently started tracking and publishing teacher attendance by district and school, and that's accessible on the DESE website. Administrator attendance. So I think attendance on the whole is something that they're interested in. Has there been direct funding in terms of truancy officers or to build out an attendance office? There hasn't been. I will say that we've been trying to turn over every leaf to figure out what we could be doing better, and have delved into our Infinite Campus system deeply to discover that there's a formula that was in the system that was accounting for students who were missing less than half of the day, but counting them as absent. And so we believe that had happened perhaps during like a half-day schedule, and it hadn't been reverted back. So we've made sure that what we're reporting is a full day of absenteeism, which is more than half of an academic day truly is, so that we're able to act on real data. And then also really enhancing and emphasizing to parents the importance of being in school. And while that responsibility for chasing the attendance and notifying families, I think, does fall with the administration, teachers have a large role in this, because I think when students feel like they're needed in the classroom and that they truly belong and have a connection with the staff member in the school, they almost have a sense of obligation to come to school. And so the relationship building between teachers and students has been really emphasized in the most recent release of the teacher rubric from DESE. It exists in a couple of places, which I think is great for our teachers who have always been really strong in that area, and we haven't had a way to capture it. And it also names for our staff members for whom that doesn't come as naturally that this is a valid and really important aspect of teaching. But to get back to your question, no hard funding, no.
I really honestly, I just want to emphasize and give kudos to Ms. Tatro. She's like absolutely phenomenal, because she will recover students to go back to school. And I think if it was anything in terms of the MCAS, and I've been a big supporter of the MCAS, but the fact that maybe there's some kids that could go back to school and just finish up some courses and be directed towards a GED. It's a thing like leave no child behind. That's her motto. So I really want to recognize her. And if there's anything she recommends, because she's been like in the business for a long period of time, I would definitely love to have her and us through the committee send a letter to the legislative delegation, because there's a crying outpouring for going to the vocational schools. The adult learning, I think we still have a waiting list. If someone wants to learn English, that's a waiting list. We really, as a society, if someone wants to learn, we should be emphasizing that. We have the resources at the state. I'm not saying the local people, because we're limited, but we really, as a society, the vocational element, the GED, the adult learning, the English acquisition, we have to mobilize, because we're gonna lose a generation. Now, I don't know if with the COVID, it really impacted mental health. Now, I know the mental health is starting to stabilize. Is that starting to improve the absentee numbers at all? Because I thought there would be a tandem of mental health, anxiety issues translating into absenteeism. I don't know if that's a factor, but if you have like a quick turnaround, it's starting to look like getting back to pre-COVID numbers with anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts, and how that relates, if it even is a correlation to absenteeism. I'd love to go into a deep dive on that. Because I think if we improve the mental health and we offer outreach to the families, and then we have someone as a point person referring people to services, and even, it could even be like food banks or fuel assistance, EBT. I know the mayor's doing it with, in the Arlington neighborhood in that central office. And I think Ms. Tatro is phenomenal. Something too, like during the summer, because I think, the absenteeism, and again, I have one kid that goes to school, one kid that hasn't, but looking to go back to school, I'm gonna say, right? And I think Ms. Tatro's been a huge factor. If there's anything we can do as a committee, but also reflect to the legislative delegation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask about the skills to identify and prevent bullying. I noticed that it's in K through 4, but then it goes away in the upper school and then the high school. Do you feel, is the feeling that that's when it should be directed mostly to that age level? I just was wondering why it stops when they go into 5th grade, any type of prevention or skills towards that.
No, we need to change that graphic. So actually, we bought the K through 12 model for bullying prevention with second step. And so we liked it because we use trails for social emotional learning, and sometimes the lessons are redundant year to year. Second step gives an age appropriate look year to year. The structure and frequency of the lessons changes from elementary school to middle school, and then when you get to high school, it's more built for an advisory block, which we call our connections block. So those themes would go throughout K-12, but the dosage is appropriate developmentally. That's a really good question. Also, the Boston versus Bullies, which will layer on top of that, looks more at 4, 5, and 6. We see an uptick in middle school, so that's certainly of interest to us as well, but that would be consistent throughout.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see it on there, and I know parents usually have concerns about that. I just wanted to
No, I'm
make
glad you
sure.
pointed that out.
All right, so that'll be added on then.
That will, and that's leading me to the next slide. We had a little bit of a pilot this year because we did purchase the curriculum and wanted to make sure that we knew how to roll it out or support staff and delivering lessons and planning who exactly is going to do that and what it looks like. We ultimately decided it's important for everyone to have a hand in that. But the pilot this year was for all K through 5 students. And so they experienced an evidence-based bullying lesson from Second Step that was co-delivered from a counselor and a teacher or a staff member. And so that went well. And so next year we'll be able to add on the 6 through 12. And there's also some caregiver resources too that we'll add to Parent University.
Do you have any information on if that made a difference this year, and if it did, what kind of a difference? Putting that
It was
into
just,
effect?
they experienced the single lesson, so I think perhaps if you ask students to think on it, it would probably brought it more to present of mind. But in terms of large-scale impact, we would need to see more frequency with the lesson delivery over the course of the year. And certainly as it spirals up year over year, that would be really helpful. But I think the more programs we layer, or the more messaging regarding bullying prevention that we can add to existing programs, hearing it from multiple parties, I think is helpful. And some of these programs work not only to support the student who feels as though they may be receiving poor treatment or being bullied, but also talks about if your actions as an individual may be classified as bullying, and why are you doing that? And similarly, the bystanders becoming upstanders, students looking out for each other.
That's good to hear. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And then the next slide was shared by Mr. Crocker, looking at the caseload monitoring and partner services. So there you'll see the percentages of Tier 2 and 3 services that resulted in progress or growth. So it's a cumbersome process to crunch this data. Each counselor in the district has a spreadsheet. We started this, I believe, last year, of their students, the services that they may or may not be receiving, and then progress monitoring checks from when our counselors meet with those students, and ultimately a determination of whether the intervention was successful or not. So some students are receiving more than one. Some through the progress we're monitoring, if we figure out it's not being successful, we change course and go in a different direction. But whereas before we just counted how many students were in an intervention, now we're looking at the effectiveness of those for the individual, so that we can move on if it is not being effective and find something that works. So this is part of our TSS plan as well in terms of our assessment of data. I suppose, Zach, are you able to click that link? Okay, great. Okay, this didn't print well on regular sized paper, so I can print this on large paper for you as well. This is a flow chart that our ELE supervisors created to indicate the path that a student takes from registration to designation as an English learner or not an English learner. So as you can see, all students begin in that first step there in terms of registering. And so part of the registration process is a home language survey, which asks students or family members, caregivers to identify the languages those students are largely exposed to. And as I mentioned last time, the new home language survey that's recently recommended by DESE, we've already adopted and already have translated on our website. It says right at the top, any indication of a language other than English will trigger screening. Screening meaning testing to see if the student qualifies for additional support in academic English. So you'll see a couple paths there. At the top, once a student registers and completes the packet, if they have already been a public school student in Massachusetts, they have what we call an Edwin report, which is in summary a summary of the student and their record that they're coming with from the other district. So if they're coming to us with an L or English learner designation from another district, we are obligated to maintain that designation. So if they already come with an Edwin report that says they're an English learner, they are also here in Methuen an English learner until they test out. If they come with an Edwin that says they are not, then they are not. So for students that are brand new to Massachusetts public schools who have indicated on the home language survey a language other than English, they enter the screening. Then you'll see on that chart there are threshold scores for each age group and screener, and those are set by DESE. Those are not set by Methuen Public Schools. So if a student reaches or meets or exceeds those scores, then they are not classified as an English learner, and their parents get notified of such, that they have in fact tested, but that they are not identified as an English learner due to their screening scores. If they do qualify based on their screener scores, their parents receive a letter that says that they have qualified and are identified as an English learner, and that their student will have access to additional support during the school day. The type of the support will vary based on the level of proficiency of the student. It could be a push-in service where there's an extra teacher who happens to be in the room working with a group of students while typical instruction's going on. It could be a pull-out service where the teacher takes a group of students and works on particular domains of language. It could be the newcomer program that they have the option to attend at the CGS. The parent also has the option to opt out of services entirely and say, thank you, I decline, no service. And at that point, we note that opt-out is good for 1 year. The student is not scheduled for service. The only obligation that we have as a district is to test the student with the access test, standardized test across the state, similar to the MCAS, except the access comes much earlier. So it comes, the window that we're given is usually late January, mid-February, and it tests reading, writing, listening, speaking. Students need to reach a threshold composite score, which is all those domains averaged, and then also a literacy score. And once those two thresholds are met, the student is then identified as a former English learner, still incumbent on the district to monitor that student's growth for 4 years to make sure that we didn't take away supports that were still needed. If in monitoring that student's growth, we find that a student could still benefit from extra support, we can offer it back to that family and say, we know they've tested out, but we think we can be helpful. Is this something you would like? That's one way to go about it. Traditionally, once a student fells, we just monitor them. They no longer need to take the access, no needs for services, and they move on that way. And so I think I've heard from some parents who feel frustrated that even though they opt out of services, cannot opt out of the access. And that's because we are obligated, because we receive federal funds, to have a standardized measure of assessment to show that we are doing right by the child and keeping an eye on their progress, much like the reason we still do the MCAS, even though it's no longer a graduation requirement, because we need that to meet that federal obligation of a standardized assessment in order to receive federal funds. So this is the flow chart that we will maneuver to fit neatly on a typical 8x11 and put it into the packet so that families understand the process and where they fall there. But typically we see an uptick in testing in July, August, some into September of students registering, and then in January there's sometimes another uptick of students who need to test who are registering. And so what's interesting is when we're giving the access test within that window, if a student arrives within that window, we still need to test them on the access. if they do qualify as an English learner.
Can we gauge in terms of the transient population that goes back and forth from our country to other countries? And if that's a huge impact, and then also the numbers with the enrollment, if that fluctuates, and if we could have, because I know they're gonna examine, the chapter 70 situation with the formula that's been outdated. I mean, I don't know if it's been revised since '93, but it needs to be really revised significantly. I'm just concerned that we have a transient population, and I don't know the numbers, that they go from here down to whatever country and they come back, that they're losing the education, and that the state is not acknowledging the numbers because they might be coming back after we would be counting them. So they're not part of the population initially, then October 1st, we get penalized. So I'd like to know those numbers if possible. That's just something too, like, during the summer. Because I think we need to, formulate something to the legislative delegation about that. Because we want to educate the children, and we operate under federal law. That's very important. I have to emphasize that. Thank you.
We'll definitely look into that. I will say that Methuen, unlike most districts in the Commonwealth, has seen a decrease in newcomer students. Significant.
Member Keegan, then Secretary Donovan.
I noticed on the flow chart, it said, I don't have the right words, but it's, can you go up a little bit so I can read it exactly? Keep going, right there, sorry. Does the student's home language survey indicate a language other than English? Some parents are gonna read that and think that I didn't say that my kid speaks anything other than English. It's not really clear that if it indicates that there's any non-English spoken anywhere in the kid's life on that survey. It's not just whether or not the student speaks another language. And so that statement isn't clear, and I believe that leads to a lot of confusion with parents, that they're like, well, my kid has only ever spoken English, even though they've indicated that there's another language spoken in the home. And so I wonder if you can make that a little bit more clear so that there's no confusion, that it's not just whether or not the student speaks English, but it's whether or not the student is exposed to another language.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does a much better job on the survey with that phrasing, so I can take that exact phrasing and put it on the flow chart.
Thank you.
Just real quick, I very much appreciate this. This was helpful to me because every once in a while, we have parents with legitimate, concerns. So parents get this when they come in, am I right? How can we make sure everyone has access to this 15 times? It'll be in the handbook? Will it be in the handbook? The student handbook?
We can put it in the handbook.
I think that would be helpful even to the staff, because sometimes you just get caught up. I think that would be awesome. And I do appreciate that. And you said it's on the website.
We're going to add it to the website, yes.
And people come in to have their children tested.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the slides.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you to the acting. I wanted to make sure that I let you finish your presentation before I asked any questions. I appreciate your energy. On the EL flow chart, I just had a quick question on whether or not that language is translated when given to families, if it need be.
Yes, it will be when we publicize it. The home language survey that has that language that Member Keegan was referencing is translated.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to highlight the importance of our early college program that has been initiated. I was wondering whether or not we track as a data point if a student, if they were to go to college, if they would be a first-generation college student. Do we?
Yes,
We
I
do.
believe we do. So I can grab that information as well.
Perfect. And I bring that up because, again, I think I brought this up when this first came to us in our last business meeting, is the importance of being exposed to a college campus life. For me, currently still a first generation college student, it was just immensely immensely important for me to understand what it is that is college life. I'm really impressed with what we're doing here with expanding this program. 10 students being able to do this is amazing, and hopefully in the future more. And again, students receiving 12 or more credits, I mean, in some institutions, that's a whole semester. And so, for free. And so when you talk about closing that achievement gap, that is really, to me, very, very impressive. So I congratulate the administration on that designation, on expanding this program, and can emphasize from my own personal experience how important that is and will be for the future of our district. Thank you.
I should highlight too, you made me think of something, Member Baez, is that the credits that they're receiving are not just honored at UMass Lowell, and that there are a lot of highly competitive colleges and institutions in addition to UMass Lowell that will accept them. And so it's part of what we're doing with the advertisement and marketing of the program is for students to understand that it gives them access to a number of schools that they may be interested in and what that looks like. But certainly I will say when we began the program without the designation, when it was a very, very small group, I was concerned that we weren't following the intent of the program, which really is to support the first-gen students and expose those students to opportunities available to them, because largely of what we're talking about in Objective 2, the opportunity wasn't publicized wide enough so that families weren't aware, and we see that trending back to where we would hope it would be, where it's more widespread, that there is an opportunity there for students who are interested.
Thank you for the context.
Thank you.
Great. Next, we have the district curriculum accommodation plan.
Thank you. And this is one of the key actions that we talked about earlier. The district curriculum accommodation plan had not been revised since 2013, which is not typical, and it needed some adjustment. So we decided to take a look at that as a district administrative team this year. And so the idea of the DCAP, as it's called, or the District Curriculum Accommodation Plan, is that it provides a reference for educators, families, students.
Just a point of information, this is for an approval tonight, right?
Yes.
So this needs to be a motion to approve and then discussion.
I'm thinking we could hear the presentation, then once we're ready, we could, okay. Does that make sense? Either way.
Okay. It's supposed to be a reference point for staff, families, students to know the accommodations that are available to everyone universally within a classroom. And so when we were working on this, we reminded the leadership team that this falls under Mass General Law because it's important for the school district to put forth this measure of assistance so people know where to look and what they can have available to them for support. But we started looking at our own from 2013. We pulled a dozen other districts, looked at their examples. There were many other districts on the superintendent listserv that were doing the similar type of work, so we had shared folders looking at different ways of presenting, different ways of organizing, and we pooled several ideas into a messy whiteboard of thought of how to categorize and organize. And really what it came down to was what's listed in the DCAP are best practices for teaching that should be known to staff and students and families, but it's very important to articulate that so it's clear what's available. And we have a lot of districts around us where the DCAP is on the website, and that's kind of where it lives, and nothing else really comes of it. What we hope to do with this is to look at it yearly in the cadence that we do our handbooks, and eventually build it out so teachers, for instance, in our mentor program who are new to us, can come and look at the DCAP, click on the link, maybe get a sample of what that looks like in the classroom, some do's and don'ts of a best practice, because in some ways it's just pointing someone in a direction to need to get assistance from another administrator or colleague to understand what that terminology means. So we tried to keep it simplistic. And you'll see that the heading on the DCAP is the branding that we're using for all of our district documents that we plan to roll out in the fall, like our common walkthrough tools, common lesson components, many of the district tools. And then DCAPs typically begin with the vision or the beliefs of the district. And so we've added that here. The district vision and core beliefs were those that are in existence. I didn't just come up with those, nor did our administrators. And then I added in this vision of a graduate visual, which we know from our last presentation isn't the final visual. A student is working on that, but I thought it was important to add here. And then in the DCAP, wanting to talk about purpose, so it's clear to everyone, briefly touch upon MTSS, and then get into the supports. So we hear that a lot, multi-tiered system of support, and what that truly means. And so it really focuses on academic, behavioral, and equitable access to social emotional supports in a school district, identifying what students need, and then supporting them with those needs. So when we talk about Tier 1 and MTSS, we're talking about what should be happening universally in the classroom. Sometimes districts get into trouble with MTSS, or they find that they have a backup of students being referred for extra supports or considered for extra interventions because the Tier 1 is not strong enough. So what the student is experiencing in the classroom every day isn't robust enough or diverse enough to meet their needs, and that's why they're perceived as not making progress when really Tier 1 could be strengthened. So this document talks about Tier 1. What are some things that can be done in the classroom to make sure universal design from learning is present in all functionalities within a classroom, and that we're targeting student support that a teacher could implement without needing to call a meeting, without talking about student needs with administrators. These are things that can happen every day. Once the teacher implements those aspects in the DCAP as appropriate, make some other modifications to how they're working with Tier 1, and they're still finding that a student is not making progress, that's when a student gets referred to TSS. And that TSS team looks at all the data points, assigns an intervention for the student to go through, usually for 6 to 8 weeks, through progress monitoring to see if the student is making improvement. From there, we could try another intervention or another means of providing additional support for the student. But these are practices that are truly good for all students. So on the structures and supports on this first page, we touch upon universal design for learning, inclusive practices, our different departments and supports we have, PBIS, collaborative problem solving, our school counseling and mental health services, our BRIGHT program, our Family Resource Center, parent resources and engagement opportunities. This is, in essence, a page of what we're aspiring to do and how we're aspiring to be inclusive and supportive of all students. Then, it's typically found in some DCAPs and in some plans that our leadership team really liked. There's a listing of staff who are available for consultation for their colleagues, staff members, or families, and then we move into the accommodations. So are there things that we do offer daily that aren't listed here? Of course, yes. Are there some generic terms like establish clear routines and expectations that we can get even more distinct in focusing on? Yes, absolutely, and that's where the hyperlinks would come to really articulate what's important to the district. To do this well, and to have it function as we intend for it to as a reference, it would take time to build out what each of these aspects could be. But for instance, for assessment, clarifying directions, providing rubrics when assigning an assessment, communicating progress to guardians, using data analysis to inform and adjust instruction, regularly utilizing formative assessment, all best practices that we would expect to see. But by having them articulated, it gives us some leverage to direct teachers back to the accommodation plans. Sometimes teachers may not teach a test-taking strategy or not feel comfortable allowing extra time if they feel like the district is not supportive of that, and this would articulate that those behaviors would be appropriate. Also, our team really liked the districts that had a bundle of attention and behavior regulation and executive functioning, is those are some key areas that often impact each other. So we wanted to outline some behaviors there or strategies there. And then also how to aspire to support students with their belonging and motivation. There's a number of students that I'll say as they get older and progress through the grades, when we see their lack of success in some academic areas, it's correlated to completion of activities or motivation to learn more than it is a conceptual misunderstanding. And so that is really important, and part of our objective 3 is to increase that sense of belonging. And then instruction as in general. So seeking approval here for the DCAP, because it's been 13 years, we're obligated to have it. It's becoming a little bit embarrassing that we have one on our website from 2013. But again, to prevent this from happening again, we would like to review this yearly, live in it for this year, make adjustments, have teachers and also students maybe make some adjustments to things that would be helpful for them. In education, we do sometimes get caught in doing a lot of guessing about what we think kids need when they're the ones that know best. So if there's something that's missing, we'd be happy to include it, but also as a guide for new teachers.
So I guess this is kind of backwards, but to engage in discussion among committee members, I guess it does make sense to have a motion and a second to approve, and then we can go from there.
So moved.
Second.
Motions from Member Soroy, seconds from Member Keegan. We further presentation, and do we have any questions or discussion from the committee? Member Keegan?
So reading this, it is definitely an improvement from the previous one. I went through both of them. My big concern is that going through this reads like an accommodation on a 504 or an IEP, and it's taking a lot of the things that would identify a student as a student who needs a 504 or an IEP, and now we're just making it every kid. And so I'm worried that it's going to delay our identification of special needs students because we're now giving all students these accommodations. My second concern on 2 particular things is the alternative setting for assessments and the allowing for extra time when appropriate. Those are things that if they're not documented, you can't get on the SATs and the College Board testing. And so if we're now giving that to everyone, we no longer have it documented on the students who need it, and therefore we're gonna struggle getting them to be allowed to have it on the tests that they need it on, because we're no longer gonna have that documentation for those students. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're gonna be, this is part of our DCAP so we can just do it, as opposed to we have documentation so we can prove that the student needs it when it comes time for PSATs, SATs, and anything else in that category. So those two jumped out at me in particular, because knowing that students need that documentation in order to get those with the college boards. So those are my comments, thanks.
Any other discussion? I'll just say that I think we're finding this trend of documents in the city that have been expired since 2013 that we're getting after updating. So, yes, absolutely. Well, if there's no other discussion, we can,
I just want to say kudos to the superintendent for doing this. It's a Herculean task, again, with the policy subcommittee, which has done a fantastic job. This is another in concert with it. So I just want to say kudos to the administration on this. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
I do like the new, there we go. I do like the new template style, the new branding. It does modernize everything. And I did notice it on the vision of a student too. So I do appreciate some modernization to this as well. Thank you.
Member Bias?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I just want to set on the record that I did step out, but have reviewed the documents, so very well prepared to take this vote. I just had a question to the acting superintendent on the district vision, that little blurb right there. Where's that from exactly?
That's the vision that, what year was that? I'm gonna say 5 years ago. That was altered to match and to precede the strategy plan. And it came with the district core beliefs and expectations. So before Vision of a Graduate, Portrait of a Learner came into play, and with prominence, there was the mission statement for schools and districts, a simplified vision, and sometimes we need to use that phrasing in language still on grant applications, and then the core beliefs and expectations for the district. So I can recall maybe 20 years ago sitting in the auditorium, Gina, I don't know if you can recall this as well, and arguing over comma placement with 160 staff members raising their hand and talking about the impact of different words and their power and strength. And so it was through many years of, a couple years, I think, worth of deliberation that these were established. From these, we had school-wide rubrics that were in play at one point to measure if we're really achieving what we're saying we believe, and then came into prominence the vision of a graduate. So I kept the vision and core beliefs because they are in a lot of our documents, still guide much of what we do. And whereas the vision is new to us and we don't have the full graphic yet, I put that here. But I know we've talked about updating our vision and core beliefs through policy committee. And so as those change, they would change here on this document too.
Correct. Thank you. I just bring this up because, again, as we've discussed, we've, as a policy subcommittee, decided to hold on kind of philosophical, aspirational, until things like the vision of a graduate were concluded. And so, again, these are one of these documents, right, that we're going to look towards in a educational philosophy document for language that has come from not just the elected officials, but the people on the ground doing the work and the administrators and the leadership team. So I just wanted to clarify where that language came from because I thought it was pretty interesting. So thank you.
Through the chair to the acting superintendent, how has been the feedback regarding the parent university? I'd be curious on that. Like even if we surveyed the participants in that parent university, I think it's been a novel idea. And I encourage the parents to participate, but I would just encourage the feedback, maybe a brief survey, just to gauge, likes, dislikes, improvements, that thing, if we could do that. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next on the agenda, we have the MASC policy review, second read approval of section I. Do we have a motion and a second to approve?
Motion to remove from the table.
Oh. So it's not indicated on the agenda that it's on the table. Was it tabled at the last meeting? I just want to make sure we're in good shape from an open meeting standpoint, because it's not on the
I missed
agenda.
that question, I'm sorry.
It was on the table from the last meeting, so we're just missing removal from the table.
I thought it failed.
Because we didn't finish the whole thing.
Correct.
This had been posted prior to the conclusion of the last meeting.
So, I just want to be cautious.
Mr. Chairman, is not take a final vote on this. We can do is come back to another meeting. I think that was the consensus of some of the people, myself included. I had some questions. I had a conversation with the chairman of the subcommittee. And again, I applaud the work, but I also had some friendly amendments I wanted to offer. So I think we have this as a working group, and we don't formalize it because we still have August. And if we have to do a special meeting anyways, just to be safe on the open meeting law, I don't think we take any formal action. I think if that might help us with the open meeting law. If not, then we can't act upon it. But I think if we just review it, concerns, I think the vice chair had some concerns. He needed to digest it. In your capacity as chairman, I want you to be privy to it, to ask questions. I think it was healthy to ask questions and do like a couple. Again, I didn't like the process last time around with the prior subcommittee. I think this subcommittee has been very conducive, very transparent, very open to suggestions. So I think in that vein, I would like to continue that we don't finalize anything, but we ask questions and pose concerns.
The only issue tonight is that we would need a vote to remove it from the agenda, and the vote isn't on the agenda itself. So, out of an abundance of caution, it might make sense for us to hold on any discussion. Removing it from the table would need to take place in order for us to engage in discussion. So I would strongly recommend that in that case, maybe we can wait until, we're gonna have a special meeting upcoming anyway.
Yeah.
We can schedule a special meeting in between now and August if we need to. Nothing prohibits us from that. Just
I have a question.
sensitive that we don't get
Yeah,
into it, yeah.
I just have a clarifying question to the superintendent. There was some urgency in getting this done with staff leaving for the summer. Am I correct? Could you remind us of why we were trying to get this done in a timely fashion? I believe, and respectfully, I believe you may have exited the meeting during some of that discussion last time. Oh, you did? Okay, I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware. I know you had exited.
Again, through the
We
chair.
just want to be careful that we don't get into conversation about it, because we're, so, we're gonna have a special meeting in the next, week or so, I would imagine, to finalize another item.
The only thing I wanted to add, Mr. Chairman, is that I had a conversation with the chairman of the subcommittee. What I'm gonna do is formalize my concerns in an email, and in your capacity as the chairman, along with the acting superintendent, I'm gonna formalize my concerns. So between now and the next time we have a special meeting, okay, because I'll defer to you on the caution on this, right? I'm hoping that the subcommittee will entertain my concerns. If not, I will unfortunately have to vote against the provision. And it has nothing to do with the subcommittee, but I have some concerns. Thank you.
To respond to Member Donovan's question, we are in the season of revising handbooks and planning professional development and communicating to staff changes and practices and policy moving forward. So we are interested in having the consensus of the committee with some direction of where we're going forward. So if practices need to change or our procedures need to change, that we have time to do that and plan for it.
So
And I
just-
suppose it's not an amending of the agenda that we can vote on because we would have had to do that originally at the start of the meeting.
And we would have to have it posted as well, that we would be taking that vote. So what I would recommend is that we will be reconvening before the end of June for a special meeting.
We're gonna need
Miss-
2 meetings, not 1, because we need to finish going through them, and then we're gonna need the second read.
So
And so we're gonna need we're gonna now need 2 meetings before the end of
with the table, that satisfied the first read. So this would be the second read. There would only need to be one
But if there are gonna
meeting.
be changes that we make based on the discussions we have on the rest of the section, then we're gonna need to change it and then vote on the changes, right? And so I still think it's gonna end up needing to be 2 meetings, not 1.
Perhaps, but I want to make sure that we don't get ourselves into any jeopardy tonight, considering that the vote to do that, from a parliamentary standpoint, it would have to be on the agenda that we would be voting to remove it from the table. That's my understanding. Just coming from the city council. I'm,
That's a ruling of the chair, and I'm not gonna overrule
Right.
the chair.
Just a point of clarification too. I did notice that there was an updated packet where the changes made in the first round done.
No, because we did that on Thursday evening, but there were, most of the recommendations or some asked for more cross-referencing for additional policies and laws that I didn't have time to do or connect with Alicia on.
Mr. Mayor. So my comments are more geared towards logistics and timing. But I just figured actually that I'll reserve my remarks for the next item on the agenda, which is any other business, just so that we could clarify in terms of timeline, because there are some things that need to be considered, but I don't want to get into them currently.
sure, understood.
And we can talk about just the logistics of it. I'm not interested in delaying the process. I want to say that. I want to applaud the subcommittee. I do have philosophical issues that I hope can be addressed. If it's not, then I'll be an opposition vote. But I think working with, and I think they're commonsensical. I hope they're friendly amendments. And I'll relay that in an email. But my intent is not to delay. I defer to you on the caution, but I also want to emphasize that this subcommittee has worked tirelessly, has been open and transparent, okay? And I think they've been a balancing act. So I don't want to have this as a judgment of the chairman or the subcommittee on this. But I think in caution in the open meeting law, and because of Methuen's history, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But that doesn't negate that I will meet anytime. And if we can have Member Keegan's inquiry vetted by our legal counsel, but I think that we can make changes through an email, as long as it's not a quorum and going back and forth in debate, have the subcommittee meet and look at the changes, and then formalize maybe some changes, right? And then we as a body look at it. And then I'll take a final vote, yes or no, I'm one voice, one vote. But that's just my opinion. Thank you.
So we'll get it done in time.
I would be concerned about an email coming to the subcommittee, because that would then be a quorum. That would,
And it's not the subcommittee, it's the chairman of the committee itself, the mayor, and the chairman of the subcommittee and the superintendent. That does not constitute a quorum.
So that wouldn't be more than, I want to be really careful because we're off the agenda right now. So we want to reel it in. We're going to be able to get this done before the end of the month, right? This would be a second read. The tabling was the
Mi-
first read, and
Mi-
then we can move from
Mr.
there.
Mayor, if I may, can we just close this debate on this item and then move to any other business?
Yes, we can proceed to other business from the committee. We'll hear from Member Byers, then we'll hear from the Vice Chair.
Thank you. So I just want to be cognizant that there were changes made during our first read to our MASC policy review section I, amended as in the full committee made a decision, and then there were recommendations that weren't formally voted on that the subcommittee it was recommended upon to the subcommittee to look at these changes. And so this week, the policy subcommittee is not meeting because we like to meet with every voice that has been throughout the process, meaning our MASC representative, our 3 school committee members, and our acting superintendents. And so this week, Wednesday the 24th, we will not be meeting. So those changes that we made in our first read last week on Thursday are not going to be on a live document until the subcommittee most likely meets to update all of that. And so with that being said, what was on the agenda today as a second read and approval was most likely, again, in my own personal opinion, I anticipated a review, if changes, questions being asked, and then a further tabling for a review once again, because Mr. Mayor, you weren't there for our first review, so you missed probably the first half. And so, again, I would anticipate finishing our initial review, as Member Keegan talked about, and then, again, going over it one last time, because some folks were concerned about the time that they had to review it initially. And so, if that is the will of the committee, then that is the will of the committee. But I just wanted to note that in terms of time frame and scheduling special meetings, because we do have other things such as contracts and votes on the city council that to schedule that special meeting. I hope that you'd be in contact with at least the acting superintendent after the subcommittee meets. That would be July 1st is our next meeting. And so I just want to make sure that is stated for the record. And I want to also say that I thank and appreciate the impressive patience of the full committee during this process. It has been, for us, the subcommittee, a very painstaking but rewarding process. And despite any process in terms of the full committee that people had concerns with, I'm impressed with the patience that folks have exhibited and expressed. Thank you.
Vice Chair?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, the intention of the last meeting when we met was the table and review the final first read, have the subcommittee have their go at it to fix it, or take the recommendations, and the second read be a final vote. The only reason why we did not finish was because we met with the 10 o'clock time frame, and we had to end the meeting. If we had an extra hour, maybe we would have got through it, but we didn't. So I think maybe we were, because the students, we had to. My intention of this was not to hold things up. I think everything here has been professionally done through the review of the first round. I think it was just a clerical error tonight. So I think we just need to work as a team like we've been doing. Like I said, I think the committee was very open and amended to the conversation last meeting. So whatever we can do to potentially have a special meeting this week or early next week to finish the review. I think, Mr. Baez, how much time do you need left? I know another hour and a half, 2, potentially?
Potentially. There's some policies in there that take up like 20 pages of your packet that we, not to get into the deliberation, let's just say that it'll be around an hour and a half. I don't anticipate taking too long, depending on the will of the committee and their changes and their questions.
And I've had time to review the second half of this too, so my questions I have lined up and ready to go. So I mean, as long as we've all done our due diligence, we should be able to get through it.
Sounds good.
Member Swartz?
I just have a question about the agenda. So when we were voting on the agenda, it could have been amended at that time to add that or not? We couldn't have added the, to table it?
We can remove things when we accept the agenda, but we can't go ahead and add it unless there's the 48-hour
Okay, thank you.
notice, yeah. Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motions from the Vice Chair, seconds from Member Keegan. All those in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Time is 7:58 and our meeting is adjourned.